Next question. What was the lowest moment you experienced with School of Greatness during the last 9 years? I think there were many years. This is interesting because this will tell you that you're on the right path, what I'm about to say here. There were many years, I would say, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 different years throughout, where I felt like I was living a 6 or a 7 out of a 10. I was going through a couple different, I've been in 3 different relationships during the podcast. I guess I'm in the 4th one. And so I was ending one right when I started the podcast. So I don't know if I was actually in a relationship, it was before then, but I was going through a lot of different emotional ups and downs from different relationships and questions and conversations that just made me feel like I was abandoning myself over and over. I don't blame anyone else but myself. I take full responsibility, but I was abandoning myself to try to make others happy, to try to please others, to try to, get them to like me or whatever it might be in intimate relationships. Because a lot of them were just never happy with who I was. They didn't like who I was. And so I felt like I needed to change who I was in order for them to like me, which meant that I was abandoning myself and my personality and my identity over and over and over again just to try to make someone happy with me and to create peace in an environment of peace and love. So this would happen at different times. Not all the time, but at different times. And so there was a few years off and on where I felt like, man, I'm like a 6 or a 7. I'm not living to the potential that I know I could be living internally. On the outside, I was creating results still, but internally I felt like I was off at different moments. Those would be like the lowest moments for me because I felt like, man, I really wish that I was feeling more of myself. And then I would learn something from the show. I'd have an expert on, and it was kind of like I would just do therapy throughout the entire 9 years. I'd be like, this is what I'm struggling with, and here's how I messed up, and here's my mistakes, and here's what I'm doing wrong. And I would find someone on, and I would try to start tapping into that. So many different experiences I can remember from Byron Katie, where she had me do the work, her whole thing about the work. She had me doing that in the session with her, which was extremely eye-opening, from Esther Perel and different therapists that I've talked with, Guy Winch, who I've had on the show, to Erwin McManus talking about, after going through a breakup, having him on and just the spiritual exploration of grief and loss and all these different things. I've been experiencing them and sharing them during the last 9 years with you. I've talked about these things, and it's been extremely therapeutic for me to be able to learn. It's taken me a lot longer to learn than most people, so I've had to repeat the lessons over and over again until I finally learned them to not abandon myself. But I think just being in kind of this inner turmoil and different moments of different relationships, again, not all the time, but at different moments, that made me feel like, gosh, I don't feel like I'm giving my best. And I don't feel like I'm showing up fully. But here's when you know that you've got something good. It's when I still wanted to keep showing up because I cared so much about the mission. If I didn't care about the gig, which was being the host of the show, creating it, running a business, managing the team, all the stuff that comes with running a business, which for a lot of people is very stressful, overwhelming. The finances, the accounting, the bookkeeping, the taxes, hiring, firing, coming up with content, doing press, having to be on all the time, having to create consistently, managing egos, all these different things, booking the show, whatever it might be, running with the advertising, the promotion, writing a book, creating courses, doing webinars, creating all this stuff that comes with this. It can feel like overwhelming if you're not in the right place. And so I knew I was always in the right place, because even when I felt exhausted from the inner turmoil of a relationship or overwhelmed, and even when I felt like I was at a 6 out of a 10, some days a 4 or 5 out of a 10, I still wanted to show up and be of service. And I think that's what's been powerful for me, because I've been in this game for 9 years, but really 13 years in kind of the online marketing world. I've seen so many people come and go quickly. They had a few big hits, they become viral, they launch a podcast, or they get their blog going for a year or two, but then they stop. And then you don't see them for a year or two. They're gone. They're gone. You're like, where did these people go? They They had some traction and then they left. I've seen this over the years. Very few people have been consistent every week for 9 years in this space that I've seen. Very few. And most people, they'll do it for a couple of years and then they move on to something else because it wasn't the main thing for them. It wasn't what they wanted to do consistently for a long time. And that's fine. This one day will transition. You know, I don't see it happening anytime soon. I see myself wanting to do this for a long time because I still love it. I still feel like this is my mission. But in one day, this will probably transition into something else. But feeling those low moments throughout the years, multiple times, multiple different years, made me realize that I'm in the right place and this is where I want to be. And I say this to my team all the time. I don't know if like someone gave me $1 billion to like buy everything, right? All that we've created, they said, here's $1 billion. I want to take greatness, everything you've created with greatness, and now it's mine. If I had to sell it. I honestly don't know what else I would do. I'm like, I would just recreate the same thing. I'm still curious. I'd want to do it in a different way maybe, but I'd still be interviewing people, creating content to help improve the lives of other people. Because for me personal, my existence on this planet, I don't know what is greater than being of service to someone else. I don't know. That's me. But if I was a singer, maybe I would just want to sing, and that's what I'd want to do. If I was an athlete, I'd want to play and perform as an athlete. If I was a writer, I would just want to write, you know. But for me, I want to be in service. I want to help people improve the quality of their life. And I think it's because I went through a lot of the inner battles growing up and struggles from all the different things I've talked about here. And I don't want people to suffer. I don't want people to go through the same amount of suffering and inner pain that I felt like I lived with for decades. And I don't want people to feel shame and insecure. I don't want that because it is so painful. It's not fun. And that pain was really a driver for so many things, but it left me feeling unfulfilled until I knew how to manage it, until I knew how to process and integrate it into peace and into purpose. And so those were some of the low moments for me. When a lot of people go through low moments, they'll give up or they'll stop the thing they're working on. And that means maybe the thing you're working on isn't what you're meant to do. It reminded me that this is what I'm meant to do because I still continue to do it and I still love it.